The European Union will continue to impose tough sanctions on Russia until it stops violating the UN Charter, European Council President Charles Michel stressed ahead of the G7 leaders summit.
The G7 is a staunch defender of the rule-based system and global cooperation. Russia's illegal war against Ukraine is a frontal attack on this order. Allowing the Kremlin to redraw borders with the barrel of a gun would change the course of history, not only in Europe but for the world. That is why the EU will continue to back Ukraine for as long as needed. Charles Michel, President of the European Council, from a statement on the European Council website.
Ahead of the G7 summit, US President Joe Biden and French President Emmanuel Macron expressed their full support for Ukraine.
Because we know what happens if Putin succeeds in subjugating Ukraine. And we won't stop, Putin not going to stop at Ukraine. It's not just Ukraine, it's about much more than Ukraine. All of Europe will be threatened. We're not going to let that happen. The United States is standing strong with Ukraine. We're standing with our allies.
We made many common decisions. The authorization we gave so that Ukraine could strike its aggressors while defending its territory. The significant efforts made by our countries to arm, train and equip the Ukrainian army. And we have in recent months made several fundamental decisions. We discussed the details of the war that is playing out there. We will meet again about this at the G7 summit, where we both hope all G7 members will agree again to commit to a solidarity package to Ukraine of $50 billion.
The USA has proposed that the Group of Seven provide Ukraine with $50 billion in aid, and the costs would be repaid from the profits from Russian frozen assets. The White House would like not only the United States but also its G7 allies to participate in this, US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said. Washington plans to finalize the issue at the G7 leaders meeting in Italy. However, a number of experts believe that the agreement will take several months.
We should expect that this mechanism will start to be implemented in the near future, and it is very important for Ukraine because it is a source of necessary funds which Ukraine could not get in any other way. Everyone is probably expecting another meeting between the presidents of Ukraine and the United States, and accordingly the signing of a security treaty between Ukraine and the United States. Naturally, a lot will depend on the content of this treaty.
According to the Financial Times, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and US President Joe Biden will sign a bilateral security agreement on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Italy.
The agreement would be the most significant in a series of deals Ukraine has struck with NATO countries that lays out commitments on long-term support, including military training, intelligence sharing and economic assistance, from Financial Times.
According to the draft communiqué of the upcoming G7 summit, which was obtained by foreign policy journalists, the leaders of the G7 states, the US, UK, France, Canada, Italy and Japan, will continue economic and political pressure on Russia. There will also be talks of cooperation between Moscow and Pyongyang. The G7 countries will also send warnings to Chinese banks to stop helping the Federation circumvent sanctions. Reported by Anastasia Tarnavska, Krystyna Dąbrowska, UATV News.